Allah kana alaykum raqib. And that means, O humanity, be mindful of your Lord, who created you from a single soul. And he created its mate. And through both he spread countless men and women. And be mindful of God, in whose name you appeal to one another. And be mindful, be regardful, and have that same regard for your family ties, the wombs that bore you. Surely God is ever watching over you. I want to point out how important it is that we recognize God in everything that we do. That he is our sole purpose for whatever it is that we do. And that he should be, including this, which is so important, is marriage. Being married is a sacred bond. Not only is it that God obligates us in his book to be married, but we want to look at why he obligates us to be married. You see, everything in society, whether you notice it or you don't notice it, is actually made up of bonds. Everything. The concrete that we're walking on, that is made of, there's chemical bonds that have to come together to form that concrete. The chairs that you sit in, you have metallic bonds in the metal. But if you did not have these bonds, then nothing would uphold itself. Nothing would stay together. So I know we live in a time in society where marriage is no longer a priority. It's no longer sacred. People question, do I even have to get married? Why? What's the point? But marriage is a contract. And if you are not in a situation where you realize the importance of contracts, then it'll be very difficult for you to develop your life. We develop contracts in almost everything that we do. There are bonds that we have in almost everything that we do. That in business, you have to have contracts. Because if you don't have contracts, then someone could say something happened and another person could say something happened. But you have that contract to know what you're obligated to. And that in and of itself is respect for our life. And it's what upholds us, it's what keeps us together. So we have a contract with ourselves individually, that every day we wake up, we set a schedule for ourselves, or we should set a schedule for ourselves. Sometimes we keep that contract, many times we don't. But when we are in a situation where we are working to develop our life, and we're serious about developing our life, some of you all who set goals for weight loss, right? Something simple as that. Weight loss. Well, you know what I mean. I don't mean it's that simple, because I know it's difficult for some people. No offense. But something like that, you have to set goals for yourself. And not all the time you keep that. But if you never keep to your goals, you'll never get where you want to go. You'll never have what you want to have. So being able to set a goal, it allows for you to obligate yourself to fulfill that. And then you'll see achievements in your life. You'll see your life progressing. And this is, on the most basic level, we've witnessed this in human history. The importance of marriage. Because marriage does not only bring together the two individuals, it also brings together two families, two communities, sometimes two ethnicities, sometimes two nations. So marriage has been placed in society as great importance. And you can see that if you have two people who come together that's bringing together two nations, bringing together two ethnicities, bringing together two families, 2 communities. If that unit falls apart, look how detrimental that could be to that society, to that family, to that community. So it is with great importance that we don't just marry, but that we preserve that marriage, that we maintain that marriage, that we cultivate that marriage. And God says in the Quran, He says, hold together to the rope. All together. Hold to the rope all together. And He tells us that rope in particular would never break. So when we come out of our mother's wombs, as we talked about earlier, to reverence the wombs that bore you, when we come out of our mother's wombs, it's a bonding that's there. The child is bonded to the mother. And they call it the umbilical cord. But as a part of our life, or as a symbol to our life, when you come out of the mother, at some point you have to cut that umbilical cord. You have to cut that tie. But the tie to God, what we're talking about, when He says hold tight to the rope, He said it is a firm rope that would never break. So God will never break that rope. You may let it go. We may let it go, but God will never let that rope go. You see? So God is the single most important essence in everything that we do. So when we marry, when we have these 2 to come together to marry, they have to put God first. Have to put God first. And when we put God first, what it does is that it gives you a higher probability, a higher success rate of staying together. When I've interviewed and I talked to couples who've been together 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, I said, well, what kept y'all together? Respect for God, listening to each other, recognizing that I ain't got it all and he ain't got it all, that we dependent on each other. As soon as I think that I can stand alone, I fall. So God created all of us to be dependent on each other. My father, before he met Nafisa, you could look at him and say, damn, he needs somebody quick. He needs somebody he can hold on to. Somebody gonna hold him up. Right. But that's the way it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. That if you ever live this life as if you are independent, the whole world will come against you. Even your own body will work against you. You think you don't need food? Try it. You think you don't need water? Try it. You think you don't need the sun? Look at the psychological effects of a person who sits in a house with no sun. God says that He created us just like a plant. Arabic, وَاللَّهُ أَنْبَتَكُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ نَبَاتًا. That He created us to grow just like a plant. So we need water. We need sun. We need a community, the dirt, the holdfast, the material life to hold us. Right? And we need air. That's what we need in order to survive. And all of these different things are dependent upon each other. So it may look like the plant is just standing by itself, but a plant with no sun, it ain't no plant. It ain't gonna go. Even if it's just a little bit of sun or a little bit of water, it needs it. So God has created us to recognize that in us, we need each other. That if you try to live this life independent by yourself, try that in business. I heard people in business tell me, man, I did this all on my own. Ain't nobody helped me. I said, what kind of business you got? What business you got? I sell merchandise. I sell clothes. Well, who bought them? Right. Those are the people that helped you. You created the clothing, you created the product, and they gave you the money for the product. That is a bond. And if they never gave you the money for the product, and you never create the product, you won't be in business. So all things in this life must develop. And in order for it to develop, in order for it to grow, then you have to have bonds. Bonds not only to advance the life, but to keep the life, to maintain the life. And that's what we have here today. We have families that have come together, communities that have come together. And now I have to have a greater respect. When I see Sister Nafisa's sons, they no longer just her sons. I may not have known these brothers before. But now if I have something of benefit, these are like my brothers now. If I got something, now they got it just like I got it. Just like my brother got it. That's how it has to be. So that's how important marriage is, because marriage, when we look at it in that light, it advances our whole life. No one goes hungry. No one goes without food. No one goes without money. We should be looking at families to marry. Not just enough to just hand out a little dollar here and hand out a dollar there. We can't do it like that. We have to create social bonds on contract and obligate ourselves to that particular contract. And know that, and God is the greatest. That's right. And know that that there's nothing that we can do without His help. That we are completely dependent on each other, yet God is completely independent of all things. God says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, attaqu Allaha haqqa tuqatihi, wa la tamutunna